Happy Wednesday, everybody. I hope you're doing amazing. I'm super excited to be here. I'm super excited about today's topic, which is pricing. I'm just going to give it a minute to refresh and for people to join. Once you're on live, say hi, drop me a little comment, let me know that you're here. And I would love it if you would tell me how the video and audio quality is. I'm continuing to try different things with these lives since the Zoom Facebook integration changed. So I would love to know what you think. Hello, Allison. Happy to see you, my dear. Can you see the top of my head? No. Okay. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm really excited to talk about pricing today. So today's topic, it's called How to Create Pricing That Feels Good and Makes Bank. Because I think one without the other, especially if you are a person that makes sense to be in this group, if you are a conscious entrepreneur, we want our pricing to feel good, and I want to talk a little more about what do I mean by feeling good about your pricing. But you also want it to make you some money, right? Like we're not in business to be free or to offer free services, and I think finding the balance between the two is the big kicker. And I've got lots of other tips to talk about today, but that's where we're going to go. I'm just going to adjust this. Thank you, Allison. Allison says the audio is good and video is good. If it changes, let me know. So let me go in and just get started here. So the first thing, I'm going to talk about several different things today. Some of this conversation is going to be very practical. I'm not going to tell you, you know me, I call this a how-to. I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I'm going to tell you how to walk through the process that I walk my clients through as far as coming up with pricing that feels good and that makes sense for you to make some money. We're going to cover some energy stuff, the energy side of pricing, because you want the pricing to feel energetically aligned. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about mindset. And then we're going to talk about practical things like how to even, especially if you've got something new, like a new product, a new service, a new offer, a new program, how to even get started from a practical standpoint of that. And then some things that you can do to kind of check yourself around that. So for me, going to come back here. Okay, if you're live, say hello. Let me know you're here. So for me, I typically take my clients through, I'm going to make this a 3-step process just for the sake of simplicity today, but they aren't always, doesn't always go in this order. And often, and really what my step 3 is like, hey, you may need to go backwards. So I don't really like creating step-by-step processes, but I actually feel like this is really, as I sat and thought about what I wanted to provide to you guys today around pricing, this is really what I have my clients do. So number 1, the first thing we want to do is let's gut check it. How do the numbers feel? And I'm just going to preface this by saying when I go through this process with people, it's one thing at a time, one product or product type at a time, one service or offering at a time. So I don't sit down and go, okay, I'm going to come up with my group coaching program price and my one-on-one price, right? I start with my one-on-one because that's sort of my bread and butter. That's my primary, it's not even about, it is my primary income, but it's more about that's sort of my basic signature service. And then I also offer other things for one-on-ones, and then I also offer a group, but that's my primary. So for me, I would start with that, or whatever thing is whatever thing you're wanting to price out, but it's one thing at a time. Okay, hopefully that is self-explanatory, but always start with just one thing at a time. So how does it feel? So if you're looking at changing your pricing, or if you're not even sure where to get started somewhere and just kind of say, okay, how do these numbers feel? Just at first glance, gut check. Don't get too attached to the number, but just get a starting point. It's almost like, what's your litmus test right now? How do you feel about it? What does it feel like? And sometimes I like to ask myself 2 different questions around the feeling, and we'll get to some of this a little bit more in detail, but it's like, okay, how does it feel to charge this amount? Like to put this amount on my website or to state this amount to a potential client when they ask me how much I charge? So number 1, how does it feel to tell someone how much you charge? Or to put it on your website or to have a conversation about it? And then oftentimes this is a different feeling. Question number 2, how does it feel or how would it feel to receive that amount of money for that product, service, or offering? How would I feel to receive that money? Because oftentimes those are very, very different feelings, right? You might feel like your pricing's a little too high, and so it might be hard to, and like, I don't know if I can really charge this. I don't know if what I offer is really worth this dollar amount. So like, eek, I say the dollar amount, like let's say it's $1,000, and I'm like, I charge $1,000, and like the energy is all wah, 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 because you're kind of like, can I really do that? But then maybe energetically you're like, or then when you look at it the other side and you're thinking about what, well, yeah, I'd love to receive $1,000 for that. Okay, so that's step 1. I always like to just get a gut check first. Start with your heart, with your gut. Then we're going to do step 2. I'm going to walk you through all of this. We're going to do like a practical data gathering, get the facts, look at real numbers, look at your expenses. If you've got some, like if you have a product that you make or create, what are your expenses to create that? At a bare minimum, you have to be beyond that amount, right? So if it costs you $50 to make your pillow that you sell, you need to be charging at least $60, right, for each pillow, or you're never gonna even break even. And that's not ideal anyway. So then we want to kind of make sure it's practical and sustainable and realistic. And then the third piece is, okay, come back to my gut check, come back to my heart. Now, how does this feel? And then identify, and I should have said in step one, you might be aware, right, in that example that I gave when I was talking about, ooh, I charge $1,000 for this thing. Oh, it feels kind of crazy. I don't know if I can charge $1,000, right? Like energetically, okay, don't move. Okay, so the video is not that great then. Thank you, Allison. You can't tell me to not talk with my hands. Have you met me? I'm the most like moving person ever on video. So in that example that I gave a minute ago where I talked about like, ooh, I don't know if I can charge $1,000. Maybe there's some mindset stuff there's some mindset stuff that's coming up there, right? Hi, Alexis, I'm happy to see you here. So if there's a mindset piece, just note that in the beginning, right? So that you can kind of be aware of how it's playing out, what's happening, and not let that get sort of jumbled in with the practical stuff that you're doing. Is that making sense? Thank you, Allison. Hi, Priyanka. Allison told me not to move my hands because the video was not working well, and I was laughing because I don't know how to speak without my hands. So I'm just going to move my hands underneath this little table that's holding up my laptop so I can keep moving my hands. Hi, Tanisha. I'm so happy to have you here. Tanisha and Alexis are brand new to our group, so please welcome them. I'm super happy that you guys are here. Yay. I love the new blood and the old blood today on this call. Okay. I always call these calls and they're not calls. Okay. So my general pricing approach really loosely is, number one, how does it feel? What's your heart and your gut say? What's coming up mindset-wise? Asking yourself, how does it feel to charge this? And then separately, how does it feel to receive this? Because you're probably going to get some good information from both of those questions. Number two, we're going to dive into some of the practical stuff, getting the actual facts, making sure that what you're charging makes sense from a practical data-driven standpoint, that it's a realistic amount to charge, right? If what you charge doesn't even cover your expenses, then that's not sustainable. And then sometimes that practical piece will help you shift your mindset. And we'll talk about that. And then number 3, okay, reassess, go back. How does it feel? What's popping up? What mindset stuff needs attention? Maybe I now need to go back to the data again to reassess. And if it feels like, ooh, I get it. I like how I got to this number in step 1 and step 2, but now that I'm at step 3, this is overwhelming. I don't think I can energetically hold it. Okay, let's go back. Right? So it's not necessarily a 1, 2, 3 and done kind of process. So is that making sense? Just high level, my very, very simple process, which you guys know, I hate formulas, so I hate to even put it that way, but I noticed as I was thinking through what I do with my clients, this is what I do. And we sometimes jump into different phases, right? Sometimes we start with step 2. Okay. Thank you, Priyanka and Allison, for welcoming everybody. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a couple of things around your energy and your mindset, and then we're going to jump into practical. So if you, by the way, let me just stop, especially since we have so many people on this live. Please, I create a lot of space in these lives as far as what I want to cover so that it can incorporate any questions or comments or coaching that you need around this topic. So if you have a question about something I'm saying, if you have a question that you're grappling with around your pricing, and even if I haven't mentioned anything related to it yet, please feel free to pop your questions in the comments and I will get to as many as I can, and I'll try to cover your question and your topic today. Okay, so if you catch me live, that's always the benefit of catching me live if it works for your schedule, because you can ask me real life questions, real time questions. Okay, just gonna check in. Allison says it makes sense. Priyanka's giving me the thumbs up. Thank you, ladies. All right, so I'm gonna move into mindset and energy. So one thing that I like to recommend to my clients, and that I do for myself when I come up with pricing, is I like to find a sweet spot with my prices that is outside my comfort zone, but not too far. And everybody, and I'm calling it a sweet spot for a reason, everybody has a very different sweet spot. But I think, typically speaking, this is what I've seen to be true and what I've heard to be true. I don't know the official stats, but most solopreneurs, most online entrepreneurs, and I would be willing to bet most female entrepreneurs feel that what is, let's just say, an appropriate amount to charge, if they feel it's too high. So whoever they is, right? Because ultimately, you guys know, those of you who have been in my world for a while, and for those of you who haven't, I'm really, really big on running your business on your own damn terms. I say that all the time. I don't believe in cookie cutter business practices. That's not to say that I think we should all recreate the wheel, but I think what's really important is to build a business that makes sense to you and for you, and that aligns to not just your ideals, but your preferences and your ways of operating. That's not to say that we allow our shadow to run the show or anything like that, but that we build a business that makes sense for us, because then it's sustainable. If you build something that isn't quite aligned with you, then once you get to that point that you want to get to financially or otherwise, then you have to start over and recreate it, because what you created isn't sustainable for you. So you may as well build it from the beginning the way that makes sense to you. I also believe that you can make money doing anything that you love, that you're deeply connected to and invested in. So you got to find your own. My point is, you got to find your own sweet spot with what works for you as far as stepping out of your comfort zone. But again, because most people underestimate what is, the just right price, And let's use the Three Bears story as our ideal, right? This bed is too hard, this bed is too soft, this bed is just right. That's what you want. That's what you want. And technically only you can come up with that for your business. But if there were, someone who could say, let's come up with the right pricing, most likely you're going to come up with something below that. Is that making sense? So most people think that what's right is actually technically a little low. So that's why it's always good to step outside your comfort zone so that you kind of cover that situation. Okay, Alexa says the video is great, minor grayness. Okay, awesome. Okay, good, thank you. And it may change too because I'm using a different Wi-Fi source today too. So my experiment doesn't have a control loop. Okay. So you want to step outside your comfort zone, mainly because most people undercharge. Okay. But also because back to that those questions that I asked in the very beginning when we were saying how do my prices feel? Number one, how does it feel to charge that price? And then number two, how does it feel to receive it? You want to charge a price that feels good to receive. And that's something that I find so many of my clients have struggled with at some point or another. I've certainly had this happen to myself as well, where you might feel like you have no problem telling somebody you charge X. I charge $1,000 for this thing. But then when it comes down to it, you're actually not all that excited to receive it because you kind of already know that you should be charging $1,500. I'm making this example up, right? And if you're feeling at all resentful of, I should have charged $1,500 and only receiving $1,000, doesn't feel good, right? So you want to step outside your comfort zone so that you can answer that receive question and be like, oh my gosh, I am so happy to see this $1,000 in my bank account, not because I need it, but because that feels like an exciting amount for me to receive for this really cool service or product that I offer, right? And I'm just going to backtrack and just say, I'm already speaking everything I talk about is predicated on the fact that you're running a business that you love. That the work that you do is something that you're deeply invested in, aligned with, that utilizes your talents, that you're fulfilled by, that helps you make your impact on the world in the way that you want to. Right? This is assuming all of these things. So you already know you're excited about providing your service or your product. You also want to be excited about receiving the dollars that you're going to be receiving. So we want to step outside our comfort zone so that we can be excited about what we receive and so that we don't undercharge. And just energetically, you want to step outside your comfort zone anyway as a business owner. That's how we grow, not just financially, but as business owners, as people, right? That's how we expand. So you want to take a step or two outside your comfort zone, but you don't want to take it so far, right? If I charge $1,000 for something and I'm clear that that's too low, I maybe don't need to move it to $3,000. Maybe not yet, unless I am close, because that might be way too far outside my comfort zone. And then back to one of those original questions, how do the prices feel? How do I feel to charge this dollar amount, this $3,000? I feel a little like, I hope somebody will pay me that. I'm not sure what I offer is worth it, right? Or whatever other thing you say to yourself when you feel like your prices are too high. So you want to be able to hold the energy of your prices, which is like, if you hear nothing at all, that's probably my biggest takeaway today for you, is if you can find the sweet spot on the numbers where you can hold the energy of that dollar amount of what you charge, where it feels really great to receive, and you feel really good and solid when you tell someone, I charge this. that you don't feel like you have to explain it, you don't feel like you have to apologize for it, you don't feel like you have to be, but here's the 7 things you get for this. And I'll give you a payment plan, right? We'll talk about payment plans in a minute. I'm a huge fan of payment plans. Right? But if you can just energetically, clearly, from a space of clarity and a space of being in your power, state your price to someone and know it's right, know it's the right price, that's your sweet spot. Making sense? Let me know. There was one more thing I wanted to say about that point. It'll come back. Okay, Tanisha says it's fine. Thank you, dear. Hello, Alice. Alice, I miss you. Yes, Tanisha says excited and not yucky. Exactly. And Alexis says thank you all for the warm welcome. Yes, welcome. So energetically, you want to be able to, I know what I was going to say. Energetically, you want to be able to hold the price that you charge. One of my clients said to me one day, we were adjusting their pricing, and they said to me something like, yeah, when you told me what your prices were, you just said my price is this. And like that felt good and clean to me. I want to be able to say that, right? So that is just an example. I kind of like that sort of like the way that she said it. It was just like, you just said, this is my price, right? There was no wonky energy to it because I've done a lot of work on my own pricing, on my own mindset, and I found my sweet spot, and I continue to adjust it, right? But I found my sweet spot in that moment of what my prices were. And so I just said, yeah, I charge X. I charge X. Okay. Alice says, makes total sense and exactly what we did together. Yes, and yes. Yes. Okay. So that was one of the things I wanted to say about energy and mindset. One of the other things that I think a lot of people struggle with, play around with, and experiment with, and I encourage you to experiment. That's the other thing. Let yourself choose something that feels good and just outside your comfort zone, et cetera, as we've been talking today. And then be really open to, as you grow and expand and what you offer grows and expands, raise your rates. Raise your rates when it feels right. And commit to what you do when you do it, right? If you're going to charge $1,000 for the thing, charge $1,000 for the thing. So then we get to payment plans. Well, do I charge them $1,000 or do I charge them, they can pay me, 2 payments of, I don't know, $550? Does that get you to $1,100, right? I'm making these numbers up. So do I want to offer a payment plan or do I want to offer pay in full? Nobody can answer this question but you. Because back to step 1, it's got to feel right to you. You've got to be able to hold the energy of either the pay in full or the payment plan or both. I've had clients that say, I'm just not comfortable with payment plans at all. I need to know this person will pay me up front because that's also, and this happens also, depends on what you do, right? I know this, a lot of coaches feel that if somebody doesn't pay a certain amount up front, there's like a whole level of investment in their own growth and expansion that isn't included, right? So that's a little bit of a side note, but this is why your pricing has to be for you and only you. And allow yourself to play and experiment with it because it will change. They will go up over time and you will find better and different pricing structures that work for you over time. So if you don't feel comfortable with a payment plan, don't offer a payment plan just because other people do, guys. It's not going to feel good to you. And back to that, like, can you hold the energy of a payment plan? It's going to kind of wonkify the energy when you're having a conversation with a potential client or customer, right? Because you're like, oh yeah, you can do a payment plan, and your heart's not in that, right? So 2 things I like to think about in different directions around payment plans, and this is just something to think about. Again, I'm not going to tell you what to do here. One way I like, and I also think a lot of people get stuck in pay in full because they're in a needy space financially, and they're like, you know what, I can't wait for that payment plan. I need this money now. You don't really want to build that neediness energy into the conversation, because if you need a client, especially if you're a coach or a healer, you've already wonkified that time you work away the whole relationship. Okay? So you want to make sure that when you make the choice, you're making what feels good. Let me go all the way back to the beginning when we talk about what feels good. We got to differentiate between our inner knowing and trusting our intuition and trusting ourselves to make good decisions for ourselves versus listening to the fear, right? Because maybe the fear says, ooh, that doesn't feel good, so let's not do it. Right? Well, that doesn't mean that's the right choice. So I'm just, a little clarification there. When it comes to payment plans, people that don't feel that, I'm going to just talk in two different ways so that if you are stuck on pay in full and you also feel like I should be offering a payment plan, but I can't feel good about it. So I'm going to offer a quick suggestion to help you maybe feel good about payment plans. This is something that I really love in my business. I love payment plans, and I typically get a combination of pay in fulls and payment plans, and I love that. Why? Well, because if you know anything about me and the way that I run my business and the way that I do my life is I really like diversity. I really like diversity, and so I'm always excited about having things not all be the same. I know that sounds so silly, but it's one of my key values. And I build it into my pricing too. Now, that doesn't mean I go like too crazy and go too complicated with my pricing. I try to keep it as simple as I can. But I like the variety. I like having a variety of income in my coming in, where sometimes people will send me thousands of dollars, and then sometimes people will send me payment plan payments. I like that. I also like it. Here's the thing that I think this resonates with a lot of people when they don't think about it this way. Tanisha says it doesn't sound silly at all. Thank you, dear. And again, this is about knowing yourself, right? I think a lot of people don't think about payment plans in this way, but one of the things that many of us struggle with, I certainly did in the beginning, because I came from corporate where I had, let me close that window. I came from corporate where I had a very clear, I knew every single week how much money, every other week how much my paycheck was going to be. Very predictable. Okay, started this business, it's not predictable. The cool thing is there's no ceiling. So, it's not predictable, but it's not predictable, right? But some people like to have some predictability, the ability to forecast. So that's one of the reasons I love payment plans, is because I can go ahead and tell you I already have it all mapped out in my books. I know how much money it's May 5th today. I can already tell you how much money minimum I'm going to bring in June because I have people on payment plans. So I already have an income for June. It's only May. That makes me feel good. Then I have this variety. This is why it works for me. There's a broader way of looking at variety, which is like money's coming in all the time, right? Somebody might pay me a deposit now and start working with me in July, right? Somebody might pay me tomorrow because that's their monthly cycle, and then somebody for their payment plans, and then somebody might pay me on the 20th because that's their monthly cycle on their payment plans. You see, and how like it's kind of cool energetically for those of you working on abundance and looking at like what does it feel like to have money coming in, because money is always going out, so you need to also see the money coming in. This is a mindset thing. I love the flow. I love that like one week I get some money and then I pay a bill, and then the next week I get some money and then I pay a bill, and I can see that flow. I love getting emails telling me my money's coming in instead of like, just once a month or twice a month, right? Which is also how I set up my payment. Well, that's because of how my system works. My system will charge you on the day that you sign my contract. So then it's not like I get all my money in on the 1st and the 15th, right? It just comes in every 30 days based on that person's cycle. I love that. I love that. I could have the same amount of money come in, pay in full on May 1st versus the snippets each week. I love the snippets each week. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my pay in full. But that's why I like the variety. And that flow really works for a lot of people. So those of you who don't feel good with payment plans, that's one little tweak I like to offer. I'm not saying come over to my side of the fence because it's not for everybody. But I do think that sometimes when we don't feel comfortable with something, we just need to find a new way to look at it. And so that's something that I love. At the same time, I think here's a lesson I learned in 2020. I offer so my second piece is, so my first thing mindset around payment plans is think about the cool things that they do give you, right? That flow of money coming in, that ability to forecast. Like I said, I get an email every time the money comes in, so I like that I get those emails regularly, right? It could be, I could get $1,000 one month, or I could get, 10 emails of $100, and that's more fun for me. Same amount of money. It's more fun for me to get 10 emails. But then on the other side, I think one of the things that I've learned about payment plans in 2020 is I took too big of a risk for me, right? One of my clients says, I don't offer a payment plan over a certain amount of money because I'm not a bank. And I freaking love that. She's not a bank. She doesn't want to offer a payment plan. If you can't pay me X, once you pay for, I don't know, $1,000, then I'll offer you a payment plan. But if you can't pay me $1,000, then I'm not interested in being your bank, right? So you got to find what works for you. And you have to, if you choose a payment plan, then you also have a second decision underneath that, which is, are you going to charge a little more to recoup, right, as like an interest to recoup the amount? I do sometimes, and I don't sometimes. I've changed that up a lot. And then another question underneath that payment plan is, how long is that payment plan going to be for you? And one of the things that I did in 2020 that I don't do anymore, it worked for me then, it doesn't work for me anymore, is I offer a 5-month coaching program. My one-on-one program is 5 months, but I gave people a 10-month payment plan. Back then, I loved that because I loved being able, as I was saying, I loved being able to forecast the dollars. Okay, for 10 months, I can see, right? I can see all of that. But what started to happen is, and this has happened several times now, because I think I started that midway through last year, maybe last summer. I think I created that 10-month payment plan. Well, now I have clients that are finishing up their program, and they still have to pay me more months, 5 more months. So are they going to renew? Maybe, maybe not. Some are, some aren't, and that's fine. And I think ultimately all of their decisions are correct. But that's because last year I spent a lot more time working with people on their mindset. And I find that most people, if you're going to do like a 5-month program focused on your mindset, you need a little break, right? So my 10-month payment plan made sense for me then because I was not setting up a program for the purpose of them renewing. I had long-term clients. I've always had long-term clients. In fact, I think my longest term client ever, her birthday is today. But like, I think the balance of how long is your payment plan going to be, right? How long are you going to be a bank is a different comfort level for everyone. Right? And I've had people not pay or not be able to pay, and we've had to come up with a different payment plan, and that doesn't feel good to anybody. But that's not why I've changed it. I've changed it because as I have moved more into business coaching, and yes, I always do mindset coaching as together, but as I've moved into owning a little more and working with people more in strategy and the practical and how to run a team and how to put your marketing plans together. Those aren't things you really need to take a break from. And so it makes more sense for me to have a payment plan that runs the same amount of time as my coaching program. So now my coaching program is 5 months and my payment plan for that program is 5 months. That feels good to me. See how the difference is? Same price overall, by the way, but I just changed it. That's what works for me now. So think that through when you're thinking about payment plans. I think those are some just little things to think about, and I like to share my experience and what I've learned over the years because, geez, if I can pay it forward, I would love to do that. Okay, and then when it comes to mindset in general, I've already talked about most of my major points that I wanted to cover today around mindset. This isn't really a deep dive into the mindset of pricing. But I do want to offer just a couple of things. One is, as I said earlier, get clear when you are checking in with the feeling of your pricing. Get clear about who's speaking, what part of you is speaking when you're checking in on the feeling. Like, is it your intuitive knowing, and or is it the fear? And who's saying what? So that when you do land on your pricing, you're not listening to your fear, but you're also not avoiding it either. And mindset work is a key part of creating your prices. And I think it's really important that when you're doing mindset work around money or pricing or worthiness is a big piece that's under a lot of this for some people, for many people, is most of the time, it's not about money. So often. Yes, we have money beliefs that sort of we get ingrained in our childhood and in our societies, and I'm not saying that that's not true too, but most likely there's a deeper component, a deeper onion layer level to what's happening with you from a mindset perspective around money that's deeper than that. It usually comes out to worthiness, to feeling good enough, to feeling scared. Like a lot of times people who had like an unstable childhood, their bodies, their nervous systems, their subconscious mind is used to that lack of stability. And so when they bring in a good amount of abundance and they have this regular stability, they can't hold it because they're used to the chaos. They're used to the survival mode, right? And so my point is, when you do your mindset work, do what you need to do on your own with a coach, with a mental health professional to really dive under the layers and just assume that it's not about money. Or maybe a better way to say that is it's not just about money. It might also be about money, but it's probably not the only thing at play. For my take. Okay. How is this resonating with you guys? If you're live and you haven't said hello, please say hi. I'm going to move away from the energy and mindset world. Those were just some things to be thinking about. If you have a question, let me know. Oh, there was a question. And now I'm going to move over to some things that I find to be more practical. Okay, great question. Priyanka says, what about charging the tax on the credit card? Do you take that into consideration in your pricing? So a couple of things that this brings up for me. First off, usually the tax on that or any charges are usually based on the amount. So for example, if I charge $1,000 or I charge 10 times 100, the fees for the most part, not always, because I think a lot of times they'll charge you a per transaction fee, but usually that's like 38 cents. So I'm paying, what is that, like $3.80 more for 10 transactions versus just one. I don't mind that. That doesn't bother me. So I don't build $3.80 into that transaction. But that's just based on the, everybody has their own, credit card processing system and the way, it depends on kind of your fees. But I typically that amount isn't going to be that different. Now I understand the difference between, and maybe this is what you're asking, because I get a lot of people asking me questions around either that question or Do you charge differently if somebody sends you cash or like a transfer, right, where there's no minimal fees depending on your account situation, or PayPal or whatever, where there's a greater transaction fee. I think personally, so first off, just from a business standpoint, that's considered a business expense. So if you charge somebody $1,000 and it charges you $10, when you do your books, that $10 is an expense and that $9.90 is income. Okay, so you do get adjusted for it. Personally, I think once you get going in your business, running a credit card fee is just the cost of, I personally just think it's the cost, the way I look at it. It's the cost of doing business, just like I have to pay $15 a month for my Zoom account. Well, I live on Zoom. My whole business is built on Zoom. I'm happy to pay $15 a month. That's the cost of me doing my business. I'm fine with that. I don't build $15 a month into my pricing, right? And I'm going to get to that in a minute. Actually, I do have something I want to talk about with expenses. So I typically think that some of those nominal expenses, especially because I charge thousands of dollars for my coaching, right? I'm not charging $100. So I think for me, when I think about it, and when I think about other coaches and healers, or anybody who's charging bigger sums, I think ultimately it's kind of like, let it be. It's more important to get the big number right than to make sure you're covering all the fees, because then you haven't thought of something. And I do know that many people don't feel comfortable with that, and that makes them want to adjust their pricing. So I'm going to get into some of this practical stuff too, but I think some people are more comfortable saying, if you pay me through, these methods of payment, it's $1,000, and if you pay me through these methods of payment, it's $1,050, or whatever, or $1,100, or whatever your fees are, $1,010, whatever it is, right? Again, back to my point in the beginning, it's got to feel good to you. Typically what I do, and I'm going to hold this and talk about this in a second. I'm going to hold the next piece. So, great question, Priyanka. Let me know if you have other questions about that, or if that brings up other stuff for you guys. So one of the practical things that I want to suggest, so I'm going to talk a little bit out of both sides of my mouth after what I just said. One of the practical things I want to suggest is that you do know your expenses and you make sure you cover them. You know your expenses and you make sure you cover them. This is really, really, really important for people who produce a product. Most of my work is time-based, right? Yes, I do have expenses like tech systems and payment processors and my website and things like that, right? I do have expenses. But when you provide a service, your expenses are fairly low, relatively speaking, right? You think about like a brick and mortar business, like a restaurant or something. You've got to make sure that you're charging enough money for your food to cover the the building and the staff and all of that, right? So I know, Priyanka, I'm talking a little bit outside of both sides of my mouth, but I think it is important to understand your expenses, and I pretty much think about them. Some people are going to need to, like, let's say you have a product. I think it's really important to have a general sense. It doesn't have to be every nitpicky little thing. Like, oh, well, I have a hammer, but I make 10 things a day, so 1/10 of my hammer cost. Like, that's just not worth your time, right? But generally speaking, what are your general expenses for this particular product, especially if you know, I think I'm getting twisted here. Oh, I'm not even connected. That's why you guys can't hear me. Especially if you know your materials, it's important to understand what your expenses are so that you make sure you charge more than that. So you always want, and I think for products, this is super, 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 super important. Products and brick and mortar companies, super important to make sure that somehow, now some people do it by the product. This is what I made. I spent $150, I'm making this up. I spent $150 on materials to make this one item. And then you want to add your time.
and my time is worth, it's always a good idea to kind of get a sense, no matter who you are, of how much your time is worth. So that you can say, okay, I spent like 5 hours and $150 on this particular product that I created. You have to charge more than like $200, right? Because otherwise you're, and I'm being super low, right? If you spend $150 on materials and you charge $200, you're not even really covering your time, right? Or taking that into account. So I think what's important with the practical is this helps people go, oh, it's okay for me to charge more, right? Or it helps people go, well, I felt good about my pricing and I went through my year, I didn't really make, like I'd had income coming in, but because I had so many expenses, because I wasn't covering my materials cost, because I wasn't covering my expenses, building that into my pricing, I don't actually feel great about the final amount of money that I made this year because I didn't cover my expenses enough, right? So you want to create profit is my point, right? You want to create profit. So you have your expenses, you have your time, then you want to add a profit, and then there you get your price. Expenses, time, profit, price. So my example now, if I was just talking about products in particular, I think it's super, super, super important for them because they have product-based businesses and like brick and mortar, you have a lot higher expenses than most service-based businesses. I'll use mine as an example. Now, when I go to something like a service-based business like mine or Priyanka like yours, I kind of feel like my fees for each thing are fairly nominal. I do consider the fact that I have a team now that I support, that supports me. So I do build that in, but I don't like charge, I'm making this up, right? But I don't build into my pricing, $3 a month to help me pay for my Zoom charges, right? I just kind of make sure that overall, if I'm charging this for my coaching, and this is how many coaching clients per year I plan to have, then I look at that number, and this is my next piece, and then I say, okay, this is about what my expenses are every year, and this is what my expenses are for my team. What's my profit look like? Okay, big picture, I got it. I feel good about that. Ooh, now I added a team and a new business coach, and I'm gonna need to raise my prices because now my profit just went to hell. Right? Those are for me, I think a lot of service-based businesses, it's thinking about it more in big picture, more macro than micro, instead of like worrying about charging each, credit card transaction fee. Do you see the difference? And also, how are you spending your time and energy? Are you worrying about the credit card fee? Because it's probably like $15, $50. Right? Yes, it adds up, but if you're charging enough to cover your expenses, then it's sort of just built in. So yes, I guess I sort of cover those expenses, but I don't think about it that way because I'm not itemizing I've got my expenses tracked in my books, but I'm not itemizing the teeny tiny details of that when I put my pricing together because my profit margin is bigger than that. And that's the other thing to think about. So if you're going to have a very tiny profit margin, then yeah, it's probably good to build in that extra cushion from your expenses so that you have a profit. And that may be, Priyanka, where you're sitting is, if you're only making, I'm going to make this up, if you're only making, $25 a session profit, then yeah, you might want to charge an extra $50 to cover that transaction fee or whatever it is. Does that make sense? Alexis says, loving this. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So I feel like I covered almost everything in that example. Let me just go back and review. So number one, do know your expenses and making sure you're covering them. For some people, it's going to be covering them at a micro level, making sure each product or each offer, includes enough profit to cover your expenses plus profit, right? And your time. Number two, So sometimes you're going to do it at the micro level, sometimes you're going to do it more macro level in the way that I gave you my example for my coaching. I just make sure that the big buckets, fees and expenses, make sense and create profit for me. Because I don't really, it's just minutia to charge everybody, not to charge everybody, but to build in like $3 a month for each Zoom call, right? Which probably would be less than that. Know your expenses. Make sure you're covering them at a minimum. So sometimes when you have no idea how much to charge something, start with what your expenses are. You're obviously charging more than that. Then make sure you know, and this is something that I talk about probably not enough, when we think about this is a little tangent, but when we think about, are we going to hire something out or bring on an expert? Think about how much your hourly rate would be. Many of us, I don't charge by the hour. My sessions are 90 minutes and I meet with clients 90 minutes, but then I support them over Basecamp or email, in between the week. So, and I also create things for them. So it's sort of weird to I can't just take my per session rate and divide it by the hour and go, that's my hourly rate, because I actually spend more hours with people than that. But to just come up with something that feels right to you, because here's where you finally get some of your big decisions is oh, well, if I charge, I'm going to make this up. If I charge $100 an hour, and it takes me 4 hours to do this thing that an expert could do in an hour at $50 an hour, time is money. I could spend $400 of my time or spend $50 of somebody else's time. I choose the $50, right? So know your time, but the hourly rate for today's purpose is to make sure that you're building that into your pricing, because your time is money. And particularly those of you who create products, if you put a lot of time into some products versus others, those products need to be priced at a higher rate. Know your expenses, know your hourly rate, and build that in, and then give yourself profit. I can't tell you how many people, I know that is a very basic, simple thing around business, but I can't tell you how many people, myself included, go, okay, well, it cost me $150 to do this, I'll charge $155 or $175. Or even 200, because depending on how many things you're building, creating, offering, if you're only making $50 a pop, it's going to take you a long time to bring in the money that you want to bring in. And probably you're undercharging. So build your expenses and your hourly rate and your desired profit into your pricing. Build profit into your pricing. And this is where the worthiness piece comes in, right? This is where the mindset stuff is oh, you mean I can just charge twice as much as my materials? Yeah, because you spent 3 days on it and you're worth it. And you do really cool stuff, right? Okay. And then there was one other thing I wanted to say. The other thing that I like to do, practically speaking, is to say, and I started to talk about this a minute ago, is to say, how much money do I want to make this year? And then I'll just use myself as an example. How much money do I want to make this year? And then how many client 5-month packages would I need to make that dollar amount, right, throughout the whole year? And then how many people does that mean how many sessions does that mean I needed to have per month? And then how many sessions does that mean I need to have per week? And then I look at a calendar and I decide if that's reasonable and feasible and sustainable. And if I have to see 5 clients a day, 5 days a week, I don't see 5 clients a day. I see 3 clients a day. And I don't see clients every day of the week. That works for me, for my brain, for my energy levels, for my ability to hold, because I hold really, really big energy for people. I need space. I have a minimum of 30 minutes, usually an hour, in between every session. because I need to prepare and recover and make notes and think through, and then I need to prepare for the next person. That's the way I do it. Not everybody's like that. Some people go boom, 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 right back to back to back to back. I prefer not to do that. So I have to think about that when I put my pricing together. So it's always nice to kind of take your yearly amount and start backtracking and then go, okay, or you got to raise your prices. And that sometimes helps people too. Again, the reason I go through these little practical pieces, and some of you may have already done some of them or all of them, but when you get stuck on your pricing, yes, sometimes it's a mindset thing, and sometimes your mindset can be changed when you go back and look at the data. If you didn't even know, let's say, I'm back to my 150, right? I create this ring, and I need to spend $150 in materials just to even create it, because this is maybe like a super fancy piece of metal and a super fancy crystal. If I don't know how much that costs to make it, how can I know how to price it? Right? And so then let's say you were charging $175 for this ring. And you're like, let me see, but I'm not sure if it's okay for me to charge more. Then you go back and you do the work and you're like, wait a minute, it cost me $150 just right off the top. And that doesn't count going to the gas that you took to go purchase it, right? It doesn't count the credit card transaction fee, Priyanka. It doesn't count the time you spent. Maybe it took you like 3 weeks to find the right materials from the right, buyer. And never mind, you haven't charged for your time to create the ring, right? Anybody else that you have to pay to do, like maybe somebody hammers the metal for you and you do the rest, right? So sometimes it's like when we go back to the practical, that helps adjust our mindset. And then it's like, well, that part's not a mindset thing. We just weren't educated on the facts. And then we go, yeah, okay, so if I want to make, $100,000 this year, that's going to mean I need to sell like 27 rings a day at this price. Okay, that's not sustainable or realistic. Never going to happen. So why am I setting myself up to not meet my goals? Why don't I go back to the drawing board, understand how much it costs, build in a profit, and then figure out what I can produce in a year so that I can make what I want. Okay, let me know if this is making sense. I'm going to wrap up here in just a few minutes. Let's see. Okay, this may become a second. I have some other stuff that I want to say. Let me just see what's most important that's left. Okay, now I'm going to go back to step 3, right? And I've got I actually have a whole lot of other stuff around this, so I might do another live on this if you guys want. So let me know. So we talked in the beginning about the general steps that I like to take. So I start with my gut check on the numbers as they are right now. How do they feel? And then that's just your starting point. And then I'm going to think about, how does it feel for me to charge this amount, like to state that amount to someone, right? Can I hold it energetically? Number 2, how does it feel, or would it feel, to receive this amount of money? Am I going to get excited, or am I going to be like, that's probably not right, right? Then I'm going to go down into the data. I'm going to jump into the practical, and I'm going to make sure that I am educated on what I do and how much it costs to do the thing that I do. Never mind the fact that I'm talented and I should charge for that, right? Because it really doesn't. You're not actually, here's the other thing I want to say. People always say, charge what you're worth. I don't like that, because you are worth more than any money. This is not actually about your worthiness. And if we make it about our worthiness, if I make my coaching a value on me as a soul, no, that's not what then I'm selling, well, it sounds like I'm selling my soul, then I'm selling me. I actually don't sell me. I sell like my ability to support someone on an entrepreneurial journey. And I charge what feels right to me based on my skills and my experience and my talents, which by the way, you can't value, and the results that my clients get for themselves based on what feels right to me, to the market, to as I grow and expand how I think that I'm impacting other people's businesses. This is an investment in your business. Do I think I can help you to grow and expand your business? Yes. So isn't it worth the investment? Yes. Right? Those are the things. I'm not selling my worth, which then means that I was worth less last year because I raised my rates this year. No, it's not your worth. So don't let that get wrapped up in it. It's understandable. And like I said, it's very common for people to have a mindset around worthiness that's underneath money issues. But the truth is, this has nothing to do with what you're worth, because we all know that souls are all, no one soul is better than the other. No soul is worth more than the other. So don't let that wrap you around the axle. Okay. So going in, how does it feel coming in, looking at the practical data so that you can value your services and your products appropriately. And then going back, step 3, reassess. Okay, how does this feel? So my final example that I want to share with you is, let's say I was pricing out this, I'll go back to this ring. Okay, let's say the materials for this ring are $150. It takes me, a couple of hours to create it. And I do it all, I create them all the time. So maybe I repeat it, whatever. I've valued my time at a certain amount. I've thought things through, and I decide I'm going to start charging $250 because I wasn't taking into account everything. So now I'm giving myself cushion. Now I'm creating it. Now I'm going to go back to the first step. How does that feel? How does it feel to say, here's my really cool ring. It costs $250. Can I hold the energy of that? If not, let's do some mindset work. If not, let's adjust it down a little bit. If not, let's tweak. And then how do I feel about receiving $250 for this ring that I made? Really good. Because I worked hard on that ring. And it's one of a kind, and nobody creates rings like this. Can't get it anywhere else. So I'm going to think that through, think how that feels to receive. If that doesn't feel quite right, you don't have your number yet, right? Then you go back to the drawing board. You look at you do some mindset work, or you go back to the practical data that we talked about earlier, and you start to adjust. And then if it does feel pretty good, then you start to say things like, okay, so what's left, right? Because I know a lot of you guys, most people have opinions about numbers. I don't like the number 6. I love the number 3. I love the number 5. I love the number 7. I like the number 2. I like 4, right? I don't want to charge something that has a bunch of 6s in it, because I just don't really like 6. That doesn't feel good to me. I don't want to keep saying the number 6 all day long, every day when people ask me what my prices are. So maybe I'm going to charge $5,999, or maybe I'm going to charge $555, right? For me. So then you start taking that thing, you know what the price is generally speaking, and then you start to tweak and refine it for the last little piece. Because here's the other thing that I notice so many times with a client. Hey, what your session charge, right now you charge $100 a session. What if we raise it to $150? We do the data, we do the practical, we know that we can build in some more profit for this person, but $150 just feels like super expensive. But for some reason, $140 feels totally good. It's basically $150. It's great, right? The profit margin's basically the same. It's great. So then you start to just refine and tweak, and then just play around a little bit plus and a little bit minus. Sometimes it's now tiny little things like I used to charge $500 for something, and then I used to charge $550 for something, and then I changed it to $555 because I just love the repeating numbers. I love the number 5, and I love saying that all the time. It's $555. How much is it? It's $555. I charged $555. I loved that. $550 didn't roll off the tongue as well for me. tiny, seemingly silly nuance, but it's really important to get that. And this is where like you want to start pulling back in the woo, the spiritual, your energy, your knowing, to land on a number that feels good. And so that's the final piece I want to share. Like, start with that gut check of like, ooh, I like 550. That feels good. It feels like it's a number I'd like to receive. And I like fives. I go back through, I do all my pricing, and I see that I have in fact built myself a cushion of profit. I've covered my expenses, blah, 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 blah. And then I go back to it and I reassess and I'm like, but it feels weird. It doesn't roll off my tongue to say 550. And then I just kind of get this like, oh, it's 555. Done. Now I've done that from a knowledgeable, data-driven perspective. I've done it from a gut check, intuitive knowing perspective. And then I've done it from more of a spiritual, let's tweak it and make it mine perspective, because I made it 555. And also I pay attention to what numbers mean. 5 is change. I'm really big on, I've been saying this my whole career, I provide people with transformational change. So that feels great to me to have 5 transformational change numbers in my pricing. That feels aligned to me. So, but I didn't just do it from that perspective. Do you see how I built in myself a cushion? I built in myself a profit. I double checked and made sure I'm covering my expenses and that it's appropriately priced. Okay. I hope this was helpful for you guys. I love, love, love doing these lives. I have a couple more pieces and I will think through whether it's another pricing conversation. If you guys have questions, especially if you're watching the replay or if you've been watching today and I didn't answer the question that you thought or hoped I would, drop it here in the comments and I'll do a little assessment about whether I'll do another pricing conversation. The other thing I like to do with whatever I have overflow is I'll just build it into one of the other talks that I do. But I hope that this was helpful. I think pricing is something that wears people out energetically and mentally, and man, when you get the right price for you, it just feels so good and you just move on. Like, I think we can spend too much energy on pricing, and hopefully this will help you like clean up some of the mess in your head around it and just like pick something and own it and move forward and know that it's working for you. Know that it's going to make you money and know that it's going to feel good, right? We don't want, as I said in the beginning, we want it to make us money. We want to make bank. We want to have a profit, and we want to feel good about the price. Internally, energetically, for what we're offering to someone, for the impact that we're giving someone. It's an energetic exchange, and it should match on all levels. Allison says super helpful. Thank you. So you guys, a couple quick things. Next week, oh my God, next week is, this is going to be my, I don't know if you guys are going to love it as much as me, but I cathartically need to give you next week's live. Next week will be my 5-year anniversary of me leaving my corporate job. And in honor of that, my topic for next Wednesday is going to be called Corporate Detox. Because one of the things that I know about myself, and I see it in so many of my clients, is that when we leave an old career, whether it's corporate or not, we have to detoxify from it. And it's very easy, just like when you leave a relationship, to carry that baggage into your next chapter. And I think it's really important to figure out what to leave there and what you're taking with you. And that has been one of the greatest challenges for me in my business, because I was so fucking determined when I left corporate to not run my business like they did, that I threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I took nothing with me in the beginning. And I had an 18-year corporate career. I was successful. I was intellectually challenged and fulfilled. And there was a lot. I used to facilitate change for large organizations. Hello, now I do it for small ones. It's not all that different. But I really rejected so much of what I learned there. And I would love to pay it forward and share with you my experience next week so that you can start to think for yourself. Many people I know have not always been entrepreneurs. And so if you've had a former life, what are you leaving behind and what are you taking with you? And even though it's been 5 years for me, I'm still detoxing from corporate. When I work with my coach, I'm still noticing a lot of my mindset stuff comes from my corporate days and sort of the way that I look at business and the way that I look at my business, right? And one of the things that I can spot from a mile away to help my clients with because I've lived it for so long. And so I'm super, super jazzed for those of you who've been in corporate or just had a former career. I highly recommend that you come. I would love to know if you have any questions or anything that you want to make sure that I cover next week. Send me a message and let me know, or drop it in the comments here. And gracias, Kelly. So let me know, if there's something that you want to make sure that I cover. But this is super important, super, super important. And as I said, it's very cathartic for me, but it's also something that I see all over the place when I watch people run their businesses. Is we've got to find a good balance of detoxing from our former lives so that we aren't bringing baggage, we're just bringing in the good into our new and to set really clear intentions with how we're going to run our business as a result of that is really important, and something that I've learned over and over and over again in the last 3.5 years since I've been in business. So join me tomorrow or next Wednesday, same time, same place. I can't wait to see you then. The reading, I've had like 3 or 4 people already ask me this week, even though it's the first week of May, what date is the intuitive reading? It's going to be Wednesday, I think it's the 26th. It's the last Wednesday of the month. So you can go ahead and pop that on your calendars now. I'll put an event in the group, and I am running over. It's 1:11, so love the repeated numbers. I'm going to close it now. Have a lovely, lovely week, and I will see you next week.